what do you call it? The red elevators.
Okay.
Because that was the back door to the mayor's office.
Okay.
We go up there, and the door's locked. And I can see in there that he had a little office like this that was his press room, sort of. And it had a round table like this, too. I can see him in there with all the TV, and I think, how are we going to get in there? And so I saw someone I knew, and I'm banging on the door.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, nowadays, you wouldn't even be able to bang on the door, right? But this woman comes over, and she says, hey, John, what's up? And I say, we're supposed to be in that meeting, and it was a push-bar door. So she let us in. We go into the meeting. It's in a room just about like this, and we made a banner that said, stop arresting homeless people. And it was about enough to wrap around the room. And so we wrapped all around the reporters and the mayor and blocked the exit. And of course, the reporters were cool. They're standing up there wanting to take a picture.
Yeah.
And all the mayor had to do, really, we're chanting, stop arresting homeless people, stop arresting homeless people. And all he really had to do was say, well, let's sit down and talk about it. And sit down and say, come on, have a seat. But he was so scared, he just stood there frozen. And finally, he said to one of the guys, he said, I'd like to help you find somewhere to live. No, he said, I'd like to help you find some shelter. And the guy said, no shelters for me. They treat you like you have a tail.
Yeah.
And he's thinking that over. What does that mean, And finally, after about 20 minutes, we just put the banner down, and they'd gotten all the footage they wanted. And I thought, we better get out of here. So we rolled it up, ran out the door, down the red elevator, and got out of there. Nobody had gotten one thing done. And so that was you could still do really innovative things like that, but you can't do it as easily in a highly secured place.
Yeah.
Right. So that's that. And then the idea of doing your research, you always want to know more than your enemy. Like to close the lead smelters, one, we had to learn a lot of things about lead that we never knew, and then we had to figure out they didn't realize they had this Achilles heel, that they didn't really have the permit that they needed. And just stuff like that. And then finally, there's no substitute for whether it's, I don't know, email to email or door to door. There's no substitute for organizing. You know that already. And so that's a brief history of what I can remember.
You got any questions?
No.
Anything you would do differently?
Probably. I mean, in a specific campaign, probably, but I can't. I'm sure. I mean, I didn't really dwell on mistakes, but I would have. I think I would have spent more time fundraising for the programs, especially once we owned some real estate. Someone would donate us a house and it would have a bunch of back taxes due on it. We couldn't even pay those, And so I think I would have spent a little more time fundraising on the program side of it.
Right.
But I liked hell raising better than fundraising.
Right.
Right. I'm sure you all do too. So I think I would. The most successful program we had was the school. And that was because in the third year, even though we couldn't even afford it, we hired a fundraiser. And we got the guy that forced us to think about hiring a fundraiser was connected in philanthropy. And he got us a $10,000 grant to hire a fundraiser. And we hired one, and she was pretty good. And from there, that was always the highest paid person in that school, was not Terry, who was the executive director. The development person. And that's how that school survived. And on other things like the tenants union, Common Ground, we never hired a fundraiser. We just tried to do it, like at home in our spare time almost. And it doesn't work. If you're just doing agitation and policy work, you can pretty much go. But if you open an institution of any kind, and we actually opened a federal credit union, that ran for 10 years or maybe 15 years. And that was the end of my free time. If you don't want to have any time left on the weekend, I recommend you open a federally regulated financial institution. That's the last time you'll do anything fun, except for activist fun, But it was the first community credit union in Dallas. The teachers credit union back then, you had to be a teacher to be in it, right?
Mm.
But now they're called they're a community credit union. It's to be able to take anyone.
Mm.
But our credit union was based on certain geography. You know, we drew census tracts that covered all the neighborhoods where we had groups, and then that became the area. And so if you lived in that area, you could join the credit union. That was a great thing. A credit union is really good, but it needs to be capitalized. I mean, you couldn't hardly do it nowadays, I don't think. I mean, you could, but it'd take a huge effort. It was a huge effort even then. This was like 85, 86.
So when you started your school, did you have to have the school registered, or how did you go by that?
You know, we just called it a private school.
Yeah.
And, well, we called it a daycare center. It was a registered daycare center. The
Okay.
kids were young enough to call it a daycare center.
Okay.
If it had been bigger, I think we might have had to get some other permit. But I think we're still working off a daycare center permit, because I had to go get a fingerprint thing just the other day. My name was still on it. And I looked at this thing and it said, in order to operate your daycare center, it's time for you to get your fingerprints again. All right, you know.
Yeah.
I called the school and they said, yeah, you're still on the name, so, you know. Yeah, you have to register as a daycare center. But daycare is a great thing to be able to provide. I mean, I don't know why apartments don't provide it. It'd be the best draw they could get. You know, people would pay extra almost to have one.
Really would.
We had a program one time where we got a little loan fund to fund what are called family day homes. And this is just like, you can keep up to 6 kids. That includes your own, though. With just a pretty simple license and, you know, a couple of checks a year. And so we help some people open those. That'd be the way I'd start if I was doing daycare again. But I like what y'all are doing. I mean, it has that ring. You've been out there long enough that people trust you, you know, and anybody else walking through doing patrols, they probably call the police. They see us, oh, that's Belogan and them doing patrols. Good deal, you know.
Right.
So, and the you know, the back to school stuff, we did all that stuff.
Right.
You know, and it's good. I mean, people need it, and it's a form of, you know, bread first, ideology second. You know,
Right.
but the models are out there, and the even with the Panthers. I mean, you had your famous Panthers in Oakland,
Right.
You know. But you had Panther groups all over the place that really weren't in the national press,
Right.
and they did bread and butter stuff, you know,
Right.
just like we talked about Fahim and them.
So and that's why, at least to me, when we at least talking about the Panthers, you know, first people obviously you hear about is Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, Eldridge Cleaver, folks like that. But rarely do you hear about Mr. Hillman, Mr. Crenshaw, Mr. Minka, Mr. Beasley, folks like that. SNCC, with the SNCC cadre, Ernest McMillan, Miss Marilyn Clark, folks like that.
Maryland, yeah.
You don't really coming into this locally. You don't really hear about that.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. Excuse me.
And I was gonna say to that point, at least, I mean, I've been a part of different groups. Some groups were better than other groups in different ways, but at least as far from my perspective, I think what I want to help bring to community movement builders group is at least having that connection and being able to have that conversation that I didn't have when I came in. It took me a while to really gain the respect of not gain respect, to give the respect, I should say. That's what I'm trying to say, to realize this guy knows more than me. Because at first you thinking, when you first come in, at least myself personally, I'm like, oh, they been bullshitting for 30 years. They wasn't doing shit. Yeah, you know, here I excuse my French, but
yeah,
you know that shit, that was my attitude. Then it took just years and years and years in realizing that no, these folks really built the foundation for the reason why I'm even able to do this. And then that's when I come see folks like yourself, and I'm on the phone with Mr. Minka for hours and hours and hours.
Oh, that was lucky.
Yeah. And just having that conversation, being around Khalif Hassan before he passed away, and just having that, I just think is real important to be able to do that. And that's what I really would like to do. If I don't do anything else right with community movement builders, I want to make sure that we ground it at least knowing some of the history, that we're not the
Came
first
out
ones
of
to do
it,
this.
The one thing about the era of the Panthers, it was part of a worldwide youth surge. You know, it was like all the kids born in the 50s were now young adults. And it was really worldwide. I mean, you had most of the stuff was driven by young people.
Right.
And so we didn't want to hear anything from some elders. I mean, most of them, you know. And I remember myself, and it might sound funny, but I remember listening to my mom talk about all these troublemakers. And locally, it was Ruth Jefferson, Al Lipscomb. Nationally, it was Dr. King, and certainly the Panthers. And, I thought, man, if she thinks they are troubled, then I want to be like them. Because within the household, it was a revolt, And so the idea that they would, the audacity, like the Panthers, we're just going to change the whole world,
Right.
And in fact, this is our Minister of Defense. They might have 5 guys in a room at the time. But that they were going to take the whole world. They were going to take it. You know? And that was the thing that inspired people so much about the Panthers. I said this as a white kid watching them on TV, was that they were not taking. They would take a halfway measure, like, hey, fund the breakfast program, but they never gave up on the transformation. And at the time, of course, they were like anti-capitalist, but they'd bring it up, thank you for your gift. Now we're getting ready to, take on the whole capitalist system. How about helping us with that? And that's why they were inspiring to me, because they looked at it and said, the whole system, let's, change it. And, we need more of that,
I was going to ask you about that.
You want to get your incremental change, you do, because it improves the bread and butter, physical, material life of the people, and it gives them hope that they can do something bigger. But if you only go for that, then you're not going to really inspire people. People are looking for something bigger.
Do you feel like the movement or just the coalition, it ever lost steam to keep inspiring? I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think people. I think it's. You lose a lot when you're doing this.
Right.
In fact, you lose till you win.
Right.
And the person you're trying to change, the power structure you're trying to change, well, they're winning until they lose.
Right.
And so it's a harder. Both sides, I'm sure, have their frustration, but ours is the harder.
Because you're fighting uphill.
Yeah. So I don't see. I'm not feeling that pulse like I've felt many times over the years.
Right.
But I think that I think there is a lot more going on than you get just from watching TV. There's a lot more going on, and I think that it's probably good that there's not a whole lot of inspirational leaders. I mean, that can go wrong in itself, but I don't know. I mean, how are y'all feeling about it?
I was kind of thinking over here, I wonder how much of the atmosphere from the Santos Rodriguez, and then you have more police killings that come after that, and then like you said, the young patriots. I wonder how much that set the tone for their, for the patriots to come in and the Brown Berets for that to be sustainable. And then when is it kind of fade out a little bit? And how does that kind of essence and spirit kind of, you know,
Reemerge.
yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, I will say this, that you have big mobilizations, you know, like after George Floyd was killed.
Right.
That's a recent, huge worldwide mobilization, right? But what came out of it, I mean, we couldn't pass one national law on police brutality in this country,
Right.
even after all that.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have these waves of resistance, and then they're followed by a period that is seems quiet, but it's during that period that that we try, or we hope we can maintain organizing.
Yeah.
So like sometimes I'll use this, and that's the last thing I want to say. Sometimes the movement is like a huge ocean wave,
Yeah.
and you can't contain it.
Right.
And then the wave subsides, they always do. And then the movement is like a coffee cup full of water.
Right.
And that's when you're organizing.
Yeah.
You've got this water, and you're taking it to the public,
Yeah.
you know. And in the end, it's like water on a stone, right? Nothing, not even Trump's hard head,
Right.
can resist the steady drip, drip, drip of water on a stone, right? So if you think of injustice as being the stone, you know, sometimes a wave will roll over it for a while.
Yeah.
But what breaks it is that steady work, that drip, 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 as you work. And that's a life-giving water. And so the faith of the organizers that eventually it'll break that stone.
Right.
That's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was
Nice
a real
one.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for your time.
Pleasure's ours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Good to see you guys.